I'm here to counteract that and say we can't and we won't. And especially since the Wizards GM just said Bradley Beal is the kind of guy you build your franchise around. So if you're looking for them to tear it down, and maybe they will move on from Bradley Beal, but I do not believe it's going to be here. So got two other potentials for you. One of them came up in the crosstalk. What does PJ Tucker do for you? He opted out of his player option, and obviously all kinds of Mavericks fans are stoked about the idea that he comes here on the tax level exception for next year. What would that mean? Or would you be in favor of that as perhaps our more reasonable move?
Yeah, I would like that. You'd have to give him $6.3 million, but you'd probably have to give him multiple years because I don't think you opt out of $7 million
for sure
for less money unless you feel like you can get a 2 or 3 year contract on that.
And would you feel comfortable going, let's even say 3 years at the tax level exception?
I would, knowing that probably in year 3 he might not be able to play basketball because he is 37 years old. So you're looking at close to a 40-year-old guy at that. But to get him on that, I always remember this. This was a couple of years ago, so take it for what it's worth. It's a few years later, and maybe Karl-Anthony Towns is a little bit more mature in his game. He's only 6'4", 6'5", PJ Tucker. Well, at times he does play center, or at times he does play power forward in small ball lineups because he's so physically strong. Karl-Anthony Towns, literally every time PJ Tucker comes into a basketball game, Karl-Anthony Towns goes and hangs out in the corner, says, I'm not playing basketball anymore until he stops guarding me. Because that's how scared Karl-Anthony Towns is of a PJ Tucker because of how physical he gets with him. He does not like playing against people like that. And PJ Tucker has that influence on games where he can literally guard 6'9", 6'10" big man who like hanging around the basket at times, who like handling the ball. And they're like, dude, he's 6'4". He's more physical than I am. He's quick with his hands, so it's tough for me to dribble at my size where he can reach in for the basketball. And then he's a deadly corner 3-point shooter. So I get that at some point his career is going to be over, and it's going to come here pretty soon. But if he's willing to sign at a place that I think he might be living the rest of his life.
I heard you say that.
So I don't know this, but I have pretty decent information that PJ Tucker might live in Dallas when his career is over. So I don't know how much that could influence him on taking maybe a hair less money because he is opting out of
$7.3 million.
And we can offer 6.3 max. So I think I was listening to G-Bag Nation yesterday when this kind of news broke, and I texted in real quick, and I was like, hey, guys, we don't have the $10 million mid-level exception. I think people have to understand this, is that we have the taxpayers mid-level exception, which is 6.3. Yeah. So the teams that do have the mid-level exception can't offer him $10 million. We cannot. We can only offer a maximum contract in free agency the Mavs have is $6.3 million in year one.
I think one of the things that Rick Carlisle said was the big difference between him as the head coach and Jason Kidd as the head coach is obviously Luka liked him, but Rick didn't say that part. He said Jason brings an attitude to this team that they needed, and it's just a different type of competitive attitude that Jason Kidd has, and I think PJ Tucker kind of like emulates that extra attitude that you want to have on a championship roster. He has, like Mike was saying about the physicality.
Yes.
The hey, it doesn't matter. I'll guard you. It's fine. Yeah. I'll lock you up too. So I got all these qualities that I want to go with. I think that's the bigger factor is this team is as fun as it is to go out there and play basketball. They need that extra attitude of not here today, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure you don't win today. And I think PJ Tucker does bring that. Now, I always question, like, does anybody have a single question about him in the locker room? Because with the Heat, they have all sorts of wild locker room personalities. Does anybody have a question about him in the locker room? I don't. So I think that he would be something that Luka could use and learn from, and to grow in the mentality of what he needs to be a champion.
Now, the other one, it's a little different because he won't necessarily help you out on the court. Now, hear me out on this. Danny Green. So the 76ers are looking to, at first I thought maybe the Mavericks could just trade for Danny Green and absorb him with the trade exception since he won't be able to play and his contract is not guaranteed. But reportedly the 76ers are also aggressively shopping Danny Green and the number 23 pick for somebody that they think could help their team quicker.
Tim Hardaway?
Now, that was going to be my question is, do you think that the Mavericks have a player that you would rather, hey, I do kind of want it? Because obviously we scouted, and the reason why I asked this is because we've been scouting a lot of people for the draft, and then I'm stoked about Christian Wood. But
I'd like to have the pick back. Yeah,
now your draft pick is gone.
I'd like to have the pick back, and if I could get it for Tim Hardaway, I would take it. Yeah,
I would too. Now, that's an impossible trade. You have to find another approximately $8 million from Philadelphia, which
to
is
match the salary.
Almost impossible
Cash
when you look at this. Harden makes $47.3 million next year. Tobias Harris makes $37.6. Embiid makes $33.6. Danny Green makes $10. And then we get into really smaller contracts. Yeah. So then you get into Korsmaz. If I'm saying his Korkmaz makes $5 million.
Yeah, Forkon Korkmaz.
There's a dude that makes 3.4 that I don't even know. Thibault makes 4.3. They're not trading him. Tyrese Maxey makes 2.7. So, I mean, you start getting into, I don't know how to get another $8 million. We're not trading Tyrese Maxey. They pretty much said he's
not Maxey. It was for Thibault.
Yeah, but they're not. I just can't imagine. They're going to trade the 23rd pick in Thibault for Tim Hardaway Jr.
No. Not as part of this deal, but the 76ers are trying to move and shake because supposedly they're also shopping Harris, Milton, Thibault, and they're looking to make some massive changes. So so you're right. I'm not saying so you would also get him in the deal, but I was curious about picking up that draft pick by taking on Danny Green and giving them a player that perhaps you didn't use, but perhaps would be useful to them. So I was intrigued by that concept.
I'm curious, where does Danny Green fit in on your team? Because I'm looking at him.
He can't play. He blew out his knee.
Yeah.
His career's over.
So okay, sorry about that.
It would strictly be a monetary move.
He can't play next year.
Yeah.
You'd release him too, by the way. His contract
is not guaranteed by
Danny
July
Green,
1st.
No money guaranteed as long as he's not on your team on July 1st. So you would release him as soon as you traded for him.
It would just be to get the draft pick back, essentially.
Because I was like, trade. We actually have a trade exception that fits in there by June 27th, but that would make no sense that they would trade a player they can release in the next week for an exception that they probably won't use either and lose the 23rd overall pick. So then I would say this. I bet if you took on Tobias Harris, 2-year, almost $80 million contract.
Took on? Oh, please.
Well, because it's so 80, much money.
Yeah,
2 for 80.
It's not my money.
It's fair.
It's March money.
But that would be kind of 2 for $160 million when you're over the cap. So I get you. I see what you're doing, but I mean, we got to think of these things realistically. And then you have to look at Philadelphia, who wants to compete next year.
Yes.
And I could see why they'd want to get rid of Tobias Harris's contract, because if you look at this, if they were not to extend James Harden, and you have Joel Embiid at $43.7 million in 2023, 2024, and everybody else is off your books except for Tyrese Maxey, who's going to make 4.3. You would have Maxey, Embiid, and possibly $40 million in cap space in 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's where I think they would move Harris, but for pretty much expiring contracts and future assets, as in future picks. So I don't think that doesn't make sense for the Mavs, and I don't think they can pull that one off either.